At Christmas, my brother said, "This year's just for family." They laughed when I drove 6 hours with gifts. Then his wife sent a message not meant for me, so I quietly took everything back, and days later, they were begging as their world fell apart. I was 32, sitting behind the wheel of my car, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest as I drove through cold, quiet roads on Christmas Eve. The wind outside was sharp, the sky gray with thick clouds, and the world seemed suspended in a moment of silent anticipation. I had left my apartment just after sunrise, with a trunk full of gifts, a carefully chosen bottle of wine, and a heart full of hope. For years, I had driven this same route, 6 hours through mountains, fields, and lonely highways, just to be with my brother and his family on Christmas. It wasn't just a visit. It was my way of clinging to the idea that no matter how much time passed, family still meant something. Every year, I showed up with my arms full and expectations low. I was the quiet uncle who sent money when they struggled, who bought school supplies for my nieces, who helped pay the mortgage when my brother lost his job. Never once did I ask for thanks. Never once did I make them feel like they owed me. Because in my mind, that's what family did. You stepped up without needing applause. You gave without needing to be seen. And so, that morning, I left my apartment in silence, wore my best coat, and rehearsed the smile I would give when I knocked on their door. I imagined my brother opening it with a laugh, my nieces running to hug me, and the smell of cinnamon and roasted turkey filling the air. But when I pulled into their driveway, the first sign that something was off hit me in the chest like a winter gust. The lights were on, the cars were parked, but no one came out. I knocked, waited, then rang the doorbell. My brother opened the door with a strange look on his face. Not surprise, not joy, just that awkward, forced smile you give someone you didn't expect and don't really want to see. He stepped outside and closed the door behind him. I still remember the cold air between us, how he crossed his arms as if to make it clear this conversation wasn't going to last long. Then he said it, the sentence that would break something inside me. "Hey, we're keeping things just for family this year." I stood there for a moment, the words hanging in the frozen air like smoke from a dying fire. "Just for family," he said, as if I wasn't his brother, as if I was a stranger who'd wandered up the steps with the wrong address in my hands. My mouth opened, but no words came out. Instead, I nodded slowly, trying to swallow the burn rising in my throat. Behind that closed door, I could hear the muffled sounds of laughter, the warm crackle of a fire, the kind of holiday scene that had lived in my mind all these years. And yet, there I was, standing outside like some forgotten relative who didn't deserve a place at the table. My fingers gripped the bottle of wine a little tighter, my breath fogging in front of me as my brother shifted uncomfortably, like he was hoping I'd just leave without making a scene. I didn't ask why. I didn't push back. I just whispered, "Okay," turned around, and walked back to my car. The driveway felt longer on the way back, each step heavier than the last. I placed the bottle gently in the passenger seat, my eyes stinging with a quiet rage that was harder to contain than I expected. I sat there in silence, not turning on the engine yet, just letting the weight of that moment sink in. All those years, the money I quietly sent, the late-night calls when he needed help, the way I never missed a birthday or holiday, and still, I wasn't family enough for Christmas dinner. I was just the wallet, the backup plan, the invisible support they never truly saw as human. And then, 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. I thought for a second that maybe it was him, maybe he'd come to his senses, maybe he'd realized what he'd just done. But when I looked down, it was a text from his wife. Not to me, or at least not meant for me. It was one of those messages you send without checking twice. Too comfortable, too careless. "He's gone. Thank God. I was afraid he'd stay and make things weird again. LOL. My hands trembled as I read those words. I reread them twice, just to make sure I was seeing it right. Make things weird again. So that's what I was to them. A nuisance. An unwelcome reminder of something they didn't want to deal with. The kind of person they tolerated out of guilt until they finally got brave enough to shut me out entirely. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That one message did more damage than 1,000 arguments ever could. It confirmed every silent fear I had buried deep inside over the years, that I was never really a part of their family, not in the way that mattered. They took my money, my kindness, my time, but never truly welcomed me as one of their own. And as I sat there in that driveway, heart beating fast, something in me shifted. I realized that I had been giving to people who only saw me as a resource. Not a brother, not an uncle, just a convenient ATM who showed up with gifts and left without asking for anything in return. So I drove away, not in anger, not yet, but with a cold, steady resolve. On the way back, I didn't stop for coffee like I usually did. I didn't play my favorite playlist. I just drove, my mind racing with memories, with receipts, with all the moments I had sacrificed my own comfort for the sake of a family that never considered me one of their own. By the time I reached my apartment that night, the city lights flickering through the frosted windows, I knew what I had to do. Not out of spite, out of self-respect, out of the need to finally set boundaries I should have enforced years ago. The next morning, I woke up with a strange kind of clarity. The kind that comes when you've finally stopped pretending. There was no more room in my heart for denial. No more making excuses for the people who had made me feel like a guest in their lives. I walked into the kitchen, brewed myself a cup of coffee, and sat by the window as snow fell quietly onto the empty streets below. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt free. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't holding on to hope that someone would wake up and suddenly realize my worth. I was done waiting for invitations that were never meant to arrive. I was done being the backup plan, the emergency contact, the ghost they called when things went wrong, but never thought of when life was worth celebrating. It took me less than an hour to write the message. Short, calm, direct. I didn't try to shame them. I didn't even mention the text. I just said that I needed to step back from the family for a while. That I realized I'd been showing up for people who would never do the same for me. That it hurt, deeply, but that I was choosing to protect my peace from now on. And then I hit send. Not out of pettiness, but closure. I didn't expect a response, and that's exactly what I got. Silence. Not even a "we're sorry" or a "please don't go." Just that hollow void where a family should have been. But that's the thing about silence. Sometimes it tells you everything you need to know. And as the days passed, the silence grew into a confirmation. No one checked on me. No one asked if I was okay. Not my brother. Not his wife. Not even my nieces, who I'd spoiled every holiday without fail. It was like I'd never existed in their world. Like I was an expired subscription they forgot to renew. And that hurt. Of course it did. But beneath that hurt was a growing strength. A realization that I could build my own version of family. One that didn't require blood to feel like home. That weekend, I took a long walk through the park near my apartment. The snow crunched beneath my feet, and the air was crisp and unforgiving. But as I watched families build snowmen and friends laugh around coffee carts, I didn't feel alone. I felt present. I smiled at strangers, held the door for an elderly couple, even bought hot cocoa for a homeless man who looked at me with more warmth than my own brother had in years. And in those small moments, I started stitching together a new kind of holiday. One where I wasn't sitting outside a closed door hoping someone would let me in. I deleted my brother's number that night, removed myself from the family group chat. I even donated the gifts I had bought for his kids to a local shelter. And as I packed them neatly into boxes, I didn't cry. I felt peaceful, like I was finally reclaiming the space in my heart that had been occupied by people who never deserved it. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Because sometimes the people who share your blood are the ones who hurt you the deepest. And sometimes walking away isn't a sign of weakness. It's the first real act of self-love. The new year arrived without fireworks or phone calls. Just me, sitting on my couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city lights flicker from my window as midnight slipped quietly into morning. And yet, it was one of the most peaceful nights of my life. There was no drama, no pretending to smile around people who couldn't even look me in the eye. Just me, my thoughts, and a deep, steady sense of calm that had taken root since I walked away from the people who had always taken me for granted. I thought about the holidays from my childhood, the laughter, the food, the sense of belonging I used to cling to, and I realized how much of that had faded over the years, bit by bit, until all that was left was obligation dressed up as love. But now, I had the chance to rebuild that feeling. Not by going back to what was broken, but by creating something new. I would no longer wait for a seat at their table. I would build my own, even if it meant sitting alone for a while. Because the truth is, I'd rather sit alone in peace than be surrounded by people who made me feel invisible. And maybe one day, I'll have a holiday dinner with friends who feel like family, with laughter that doesn't hide pain, and warmth that doesn't come with conditions. Until then, I'm at peace with where I am, no longer begging for love from the people who once made me feel unlovable. I chose myself, and that was the most powerful gift I could have given this season. Like this story? Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear they're not alone.